So today we're going to take the time to teach you everything you need to know about installing drywall. How, why, what's to do, the right products, the right tools, the right materials. So first of all, let's just talk drywall turkey. Drywall, basically dust pressed between paper. You have two edges on drywall. You have the factory edge, or the butt joint, and then you have the other edge, which is a tapered edge. I don't know, Max, if your camera can pick that up, but it rides a certain depth and then bloop, it has a little scoop here. And the idea being, when you put two of these taper joints together, all you need is one paper tape joint, a fill coat, and then a finish coat. Nice and simple. You always have a gorgeous joint. The more joints you can have that have the paper on them, the less work and the easier it is to finish. Every time you put two butt ends together, you've got to go through another step of taping there. It takes another coat of application, and it takes a little bit of trick. So you got to have a lot more skill to do that kind of joint. Fortunately for us, this room here, it's pretty small, so we're just going to go with all full sheets of drywall. This is 3/8 thick, this is 1/2 inch. It adjusts the depth here. The idea is when you put two sheets together, you can tape that with only 3 steps, nice and simple. When you have really long walls, drywall only comes 8s, 9s, 10s, 12s. If the wall is longer than 12, then you're going to have a joint. It's going to be a butt joint. And that takes a little bit more skill when it comes to the taping and how to finish that. We'll show you that soon, but for today we'll talk about how to install this board. Now, stuff's pretty flexible, doesn't have a lot of strength to it, so you need to have enough support in behind the wall to hold this stuff. You can't just frame 24 inches on center and use regular drywall. You're better to go with 16 inch. So basically your tools are simple. You need a knife, you need a tape measure, you need a drill, Phillips bit. But where most people, and this is interesting, make the mistake. They go to the store and they buy their screws. And the box says drywall screws, so they grab it. But there's a lot of different lengths, and there's 2 different threads. So what I want you to know is, the fine thread screw is for metal stud framing, mostly for commercial. I don't recommend metal framing in your house. You want to buy the coarse threaded screw. It's a wider thread, it'll grab wood better. The fine thread screw in wood does tend to end up popping out on you because it doesn't have a wide enough thread to really grab the wood. I see guys making this mistake all the time. Sometimes it's ignorance, sometimes it's laziness. Now here, you can buy your screws in all kinds of different lengths. The secret is this. You take the thickness of your drywall, 1/2 inch. You multiply that by 1.5, that's 3/4 inch. You add those 2 numbers together, that gives you the length of your screw. So remember, whatever you're screwing into, your screw has to be 1.5 times longer in the material you're screwing into than what you're attaching to the wall. So you got a 1/2 inch material, you need 1.25 inches. If you're installing type X or 5/8 drywall, you got to go to 1 5/8. If you're installing 2 layers, you go to 2 inch. Some commercial applications we can have screws up to 2.5 inch. But use the right length of screw so that you're not accidentally screwing right into somebody else's wire. That's key. Electricians run their wiring at a certain depth of the wall to guarantee there won't be contact. If your screw's too long and you pierce a wire, you pay the electrician's bill. It's not his fault. So when it comes to cutting tools for your drywall, you really have 3 basic options. One is the knife, the standard. And when you're cutting drywall with the knife, really simple. You want to just use the tip of the knife, cut the paper. It's just really delicate. You don't have to dig all the way in. If you get past the paper, you're going to be cutting into that powder. It'll dull your blade so fast, and then it's dangerous because a dull knife is the one that's going to cut you. The other cutting tool I like to use is the Rotozip. Mine has a little bit bigger nut on it here, so my bit is wider than usual. Just turn it on. I should mention, the reason this wall is up already is because we had spray foam in this building, so we wanted to cover that up for fire safety's sake. So we have a window here. I'm just going to cut the majority of this window out and demonstrate how this tool operates. Now it makes a little bit of dust. It has a nasty screeching sound, so people who don't like that nails on the chalkboard might bother you. Here we go. Daylight. This tool is incredibly effective around plug boxes because you can stick it in, run it to the box, jump the other side, and then just follow the contour. Always use this tool counterclockwise, and then you'll have great success. Now, if you don't have a Rotozip, the only other option is good old sweat, blood, and tears using one of these little drywall saws. These can be real effective. The teeth are going 2 different directions, so be careful. If you cut yourself with this, you cannot stitch yourself back together. It'll be a nasty mess, and it'll take weeks to heal. So before you start your drywall installation, the basic process is your ceiling first, then the walls. There's no real science to it other than the fact that when you're doing your joints, if the wall board is pushed up into the ceiling, it closes up the gap. It gets rid of all of those little errors that you have with the rooms being unsquare when you're cutting the wall. So you can have a little gap around the outside of the room. It'll cover with the walls panels afterwards. It's not really supporting anything. We are screwing it to the ceiling after all. So what we want to do is inspect your ceiling before you close. You're looking for a few major things. One, let's go right up to the ceiling here, Max. One, your heat runs. Is there insulation between your wires and your heat runs? This is brutally important. In our region, we have it in our electrical code that there must be insulation between the wire and heat sources as to not overheat the wires and cause fire. Secondly, make notes of where your light fixtures are, your smoke alarms, your heat runs. These are all things that you want to make sure that you take care of before you get started, because we can use our Rotozip tool to cut around the boxes and all that sort of thing, but only once the fixtures are removed. So this light is in the way. Really simple. We know the power's off to this. All we gotta do is just back off the screws. And you could use a knife or a screwdriver. Sometimes I'll just cut the wires because there's lots of length here, and I know an electrician can wire this back up again for me, no problem. All right. So we're just gonna pull that loose, and we're gonna pull this loose. All right, always wrap these things up before you put them back in the box, just in case somebody hits that light switch by accident. Okay, so what we have here is an interconnected smoke alarm, CO2 alarm. You can tell it's interconnected because it has a ton of wires coming in and out of this bad boy. As soon as I take this off, it's gonna start making a horrible noise. So we're gonna wait until we're right ready to put the drywall up, just so we don't lose our sanity. So I'm just inspecting the ceiling, and I see I got a couple of nails sticking down. This isn't exactly a hammer, but it'll do the job. Okay, and we're missing one piece of strapping on the outside. So before we put up our ceiling, we've got to make sure we have strapping. The same we want wood every 16 inches on a wall. You want to have your strapping on your ceiling about the same. Now, it's very narrow. It's 1x3 is what I'm using. So usually when you're strapping, if you screw the middle, the strapping will dry out and twist a little bit. So what you want to do is you want to put 2 screws in, just to make sure you're getting both sides so that twisting motion doesn't happen. And I'll alternate that every other strapping and just go in the middle for simplicity. Because we install our drywall contrary to the strapping, we're not concerned about whether it's perfectly on 16. Some guys I see, they try to make sure that their wood is perfectly centered so they can install their wood and on the joint. That's a lot of extra work. If you just measure off your room and put your drywall the opposite direction, goes up a lot faster. So here's a Reno tip for you. When you're screwing near the end of a piece of spruce like this, it's really thin. Start your bit, put the drill on reverse, and push, and you see smoke. Did you see that, Max? Oh, yeah. When you see smoke, you've cauterized that wound. If you just drive a screw in a piece of strapping like this, it'll split on you. Now we're done, we're ready to install our drywall. Only thing left to do now is carry it down here from the truck. So let's go get our 10-foot sheets. No time to waste, time is money. That's a little treacherous. Max has got the camera rolling so that when we wipe out, not if, he has it on film. So the system here, when you're putting up a ceiling, you need to remember that you're going to have a 1/2-inch drywall on either side coming up. So you've got lots of room there for variance. So instead of worrying about if the room is square or not, what we're going to do is we're going to take the actual measurement, take a 1/2 inch off, and then when we install, we'll try to split the difference in the gap and put a 1/4 inch on each side. So our actual measurement is 118 3/4. So we'll install it 118 1/4. That's a 10-foot sheet of drywall. Well, let's go get that cut. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. Welcome to our video of how to install drywall on a ceiling to make it look like this, using this, and you can do it all by yourself. So your standard sheet of drywall is 4 feet wide. So you want to measure off 4 feet, which is here, and then do an eyeball. So I'm going to go right through the middle of my smoke detector. So unfortunately for the first sheet, I'm going to have to take that off. I'm also covering up my heat run here. Now this one is strapped down, it won't move out of the way. So my drywall is going to have to bend over it and cut it out right away. So what I want to do is get a measurement. I want to measure to the middle of this. So I'm 38 inches off. So I make a mark, 38 inches. And then I measure from here, 39. Whatever way you want to mark it is fine. And then after we get the drywall screwed up a little bit, we'll get the cutting tool and zip that out. Okay, so I've got my 4 foot marked. Now this is just a little trick that I've got here. If you set a construction screw, and not into your hand, just past your 4 foot mark, and leave it hanging 3/4 of an inch, right there. Now when I come in with my drywall, I can come up, I can hold the drywall with one hand, the other hand I can put on this brace. And you can see that that's going to carry lots of weight. That frees up my hand. I can grab my drill, load some screws, put a few in, nice and simple. If you are working alone and you have to drywall your ceiling, this is a great trick. Strap one of those suckers up there with some construction screws. And then we have this block up here in the middle of the ceiling, okay? Again, construction screw all the way through, attach it just past your 4 foot mark. This enables you to actually lift the sheet up, put it in, walk up the ladder with it, hold it with one hand, and spin the block over on top. All right? And now I'm gonna do a demonstration. Keep it nice and tight. So what I do is I like to set up in front of my ladder, and then I'll just take this sheet, lift it up, hoist it up over your head. Whew. Once you're there, you can let that lumber there do all the carrying. Now the reason you want to leave this nice and loose is so that anything that's in the way, you have a little room. Now we're good to go. I can pull out the drill and screw this bad boy in. When you're taking off your smoke detector, we have to take off 2 things. One is the body of this, and it has a little pinch on it. You take this little plate and you just wiggle this off. Oh Lord, that's how they've done it. This one requires you to pry and pull. Okay. And then disengage this mounting plate. Push everything up inside the box. Lucky for us, it's right on the edge, so we'll be able to see it when we install the drywall. If it's buried inside the ceiling, again, make your measurements, mark it on the wall. Always cut as you go. Don't rely on your measurements to save you. Sooner or later, someone's gonna forget to cut a hole, and you'll do all your taping and the priming, and you'll be like, oh yeah, where's that box? So always cut as you go. So now we're gonna install this as a 2-man application. Once again, very similar. When you're installing a piece of drywall the same size as the room, it's difficult to just lift it up over your head like I did in the demonstration. So really what you want to do is you want to lay one end flat and lift the other end up. Go ahead. There's always one guy that's high and one guy that's low. Because the distance in the room from there to there, now the room is almost 11 feet long. When it's in square, it's only 10 feet long. As soon as you lift that corner, it's 11 feet long. Now what you do is you pay attention to your end, and you keep it as tight to that corner as you can, okay, and square, and we slide it in together. All right, now, we might even have room here to get this above our drywall, I don't know. Probably not. There's my 3rd pair of hands. the little block comes in handy even if you got 2 guys working. So we have a smoke detector and we've got a heat run. And we don't want to put any screws anywhere near that stuff because it'll end up breaking right through, okay? And that would be just a waste of time. So I got a heat run over here. So I'm gonna, first screw is gonna go in the strapping, out of the way a little bit. There we go. I don't want to get anywhere near my heat run. All right, and then on each side, usually about 3 or 4 on each side of the sheet. That's enough to hold it in place. We get the cutting tool right away. All right, Captain, cutting tool. My hole is 38, and then 39. It's a good little technique for drawing. Now we'll bring the Rotozip. Want to set the guard so that we're going to cut it properly. Pull towards the middle. That's it. There you go. Okay, so our box here is mounted up really too high for what we're doing here for finishing the ceiling. And they've used flooring screws as well. That's cool. Let's pull these wires out of here. Out of the way. Holy cow, lots of wires. All right. Okay. Now, we just want to drop our box a little bit so that our mounting screws will actually work. We can put these on first. The other mounting screw. Thanks, buddy. Actually, yeah, let's get all these pushed back in first. That'll be a nightmare trying to do that afterwards. And then, when you're putting these back in, check the pin position. There's a couple of holes and then a big space and another hole. Make sure you line them up properly. If you put it in backwards the first time, you don't get to try again. And we're gonna leave that hanging until our other sheet goes in, just so it's not in the way, but we should be fine. Depending on how comfortable you are when you're drywalling the ceiling, with drawing a straight line, it can be a good habit. Mark off where the wood is first if you find it necessary. I generally don't do that, but I know some guys live by that rule. Now, also a good habit, always go 5 screws. If you're doing renovation at your own home and you go with 4 screws, you probably won't have a problem. But if you get sloppy and lazy about these things, one of these days, maybe you'll be working on a job site and it'll be commercial drywall and there's fire rating involved. And if this inspector only sees 4 screws in a sheet of drywall, he'll fail your installation. Because believe it or not, there's a building code for just about everything. So this one here is 12 inches to the center. The trick here is, first of all, you just need to get it up. All right, first, before you do anything, just get it up into place. If it's a 2-man assembly, it's the same thing. The other guy's in charge of holding the weight and not letting it bounce around. Because while it's jiggling, it'll pop off the screws. If you're by yourself, you're gonna need about 6 or 8 of those little wooden blocks that I showed you. That can be quite precarious. Now we also have an electrical box in the middle of the room. So again, we wanna screw it around the outside perimeter. I like to use my head in this kind of situation, which is why I'm going a little bald on the top. Now, the goal here is make sure that the drywall is tight together. You don't want a gap here. It just causes a whole lot of extra mud and a lot of extra drying. You know where your straps are because that's where your screws are left off. So you can get the first 3 screws in here without even moving around. And then all I gotta do, shift my weight and hold that. Don't be juggling around there. You're not allowed to move. You just gotta feel the burn. Once I get a few screws on my side, like a good neighbor, I'll go over and put a couple in his too. Sooner or later, the lactic acid will start to burn. So in this situation, the box for the electrical is really recessed in the ceiling. It's on the original joist, not the strapping. Not a concern. The electrician is going to come back and put the fixture up. And what he can do is he can buy a 1/2-inch extender. It screws to that box and brings it down to a height where it closes off the gap. It's good for fire separation, but it's also good for mounting things. I like to use the box extender instead of just using really long screws. Just call me old-fashioned. I like to have these gaps closed up just in case. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to cover all the tips and tricks in drywall in 101. How to cut it, score it, snap it, break it, make it look beautiful. All right, so let's talk measuring. It's easy to get the measurement of the length, especially if you have 2 people. But the secret here is you need to measure at the end and the middle and at the other end again, so that you know how out of square the room is. And to transfer that measurement on the drywall so that when you bring it up here, all your right measurements are in the right place. The reason I want to measure the middle as well is because I know the drywall's straight, but I don't know if the wall is straight. This might actually be all screwed together to a 2x4 that has a warp in it, and I could have a curved wall and I won't be able to see it from here. It's 22 3/4. So what we're gonna do is give ourselves a little bit of a break, and we'll go 22 1/2, knowing that the wall will cover the gap. The middle is very consistent, 22 3/4. Wow. The freaky thing here is the outside wall and this wall were pre-existing from the builder. Would this be the first square room of my life? Ah, nope. All right, it's close. It's 22 1/2, big surprise. All right. Here's the other tool that I forgot to mention you're gonna need. This is a Drywall Square, T-square, aluminum, just leave in the back of your truck. It'll last forever. Don't abuse it though, you wanna make sure it stays square. Here's this tool is fabulous. I've seen a lot of guys do a lot of different ways when they're cutting, but what I like to use is this square because it makes my life easy. My measurement for my ceiling drywall is 1/12 7/8. All I do is run over to the tape, and when I hit the spot, right, I'm done. I don't even need to mark my board. Just take out my knife, keep the blade short. Remember, you're just cutting the paper. Don't have to do anything too extraneous here. And then lift up the corner, break it, step in behind. Always keeping your hands away from your cutting area. There we go. That's how to cut drywall 101. Our ceiling is also gonna get cut at 22 3/8. That's the width that we're gonna use. Now the fact that I can cut it continuous all the way across is awesome because I get to cheat. This particular tool has numbers running up and down both sides. So a full sheet of drywall, all you have to do is follow up to where it says 22 3/8, and then you can set your blade on the edge of the square, and then push the tip into the paper, and then with your left hand sliding across the drywall, pulling with the right hand, mark the whole sheet together at the same time. Done. Give it a little bit of a pop. Very, very fond from Happy Days. Now the sheet on the bottom is the one that I'm using here. So I don't want to set it on the ground. So I set it on my foot. And again, I'm only cutting the paper on the back side. One of the advantages of these knives, if you can't reach, you just extend the blade. And that's the piece for my ceiling. Let's just go over a few tips and tricks here on how to cut drywall. Using your knife, first of all. You don't want your blade extended too far. If your blade is really extended and you start cutting, your blade will actually bend and warp and you'll end up cutting like an S-curve. So you keep your blade short, you'll cut straight. That helps. Number two, let's say, I'm just gonna draw out a cut, or imaginary cut here, okay? So we're cutting around a box, all right? And I wanted to cut that. You can't snap that. So one of these lines needs to be cut with a saw. So traditionally what guys will do is they'll take their saw out and they'll start cutting that line. Okay, and they're jiggling around and fighting with it. The way you cut with a saw is simple. Little pressure, lots of movement. The faster you go with the saw, the easier it is, and you don't risk breaking your board. The other thing you can do, because it's only drywall, it's not finished carpentry, is you can take your mark and you can just cut down to it, cut it across. Now here's the fun part. I can just reach over, I can see my line underneath the drywall, place my knife on the drywall, and I know exactly where I'm going to go. So I look to where I'm going to go, which is right here. I don't need any straight tools. Just look to where I'm going to go, and your brain does all the work for you. And then you can cut the back side as well, and you have a cut piece of drywall. You might find it necessary to trim the inside corner a little bit, but that's it. Good to go. Don't even need that saw. If you're cutting a curve, let's say you're coming around a curve wall. All right, it's the same thing before. A little bit of flex. Now, let's go up on the other side. You put that flex. Can you see that shadow? Yeah. That picks up the shadow. So when I go to a bit of flex, I can see the shadow. And again, I'm only cutting the paper. So don't use too much pressure. And you can cut a perfect curve. Cutting across the top, and you're just taking off a little bit. Let's say you're taking off a ½ inch. Let's draw the line first. You can draw a line with that square. Instead of trying to draw that line with your knife in the square at the same time, really hard to manipulate something really tight together. Same thing, just draw the pencil line. And you can follow the pencil line this way by looking just in front of your knife, or you can just look to where you're going. Now, that's a horrible job. What I would suggest is if you're looking where you're going, your knife you also have to have in your peripheral. And then you're pretty straight. If you have more than one line in the same area, you know, your drywall's gonna be all confused. If you have more than one cut because you screwed up, put the block on the cut line that you want, pinch it, okay, just beneath your line, and you roll it over. And then all those cuts will come off at the same time. Now, let's say you're scribed, you've got a scribed surface, so you got a bit of a curve going on, and you want to cut that nice. Okay, so when you're holding your knife with your thumb and your finger, you've actually got almost like a tripod going on. You can squeeze the knife with your hand and leave your thumb and finger out. Now you've got incredible stability. You can just watch where you're going, using your thumb and your finger like a tripod to maintain where you're going. Because it's a curve, yowzers! Again, just put that little bit of a dimple in there. Create that shadow. And off you go. If you have to do a hole and you don't have your hole saw, first of all, point your finger you can draw a pretty decent circle here. All right, there's your hole, let's say. Take your knife, do a little bit of a tripod action here. Now, if you don't have a hole saw or a Rotozip, you can use your saw and you can stab it through and cut the circle, or you can just square, make a big X on the back of your drywall. All right. And punch it through. And you got a hole. All right. Okay. This is what I was talking about earlier. Close the gap on the taper joint. Okay. That one is a little split from the screw. Back it up till you get good contact. There you go. 4 screws will hold that until you finish it off. If you go near the end, you can actually cheat. You look and see if the strap goes all the way to the end. If it doesn't, back it. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. So today we are going to be installing drywall on the ceiling alone. Now there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can be an absolute He-Man, throw up some 2x4s and maybe some blocking on screws and lift that up and carry it yourself and spin them in place, or you can go and blow 30 bucks and rent the drywall panel lift. This thing is amazing. It is worth its weight in gold. It's just a quick tripod assembly. You can rent these things at any building store, about 30 bucks a day, give or take. And to be honest with you, it is a second pair of hands. And drop that in, there we go. Loose the wire, pull that out. Ah! That just fits right in there. And does 360. Okay, nice and easy. Whoop. These things drop into there. There we go. So, this is how this bad boy works. You throw a sheet of drywall on there, sits on the arms, and then you just roll it over and you crank it up to the ceiling. So all in all, it's pretty basic, simple construction. But it has a couple of other bells and whistles here. Right here. These extension arms pop out to help balance your sheet. So you can carry 8s, 10s, 12s, no problem. All right. So when you're working alone, the whole trick is this. Carry your sheet white facing the lift and set it in. So when you lift it up, your white paper is facing you. So I have pre-cut my drywall sheets to the size that I want to put on the ceiling. And ultralight drywall isn't that heavy. Try to get the middle of the drywall. And then we just fold it over nice and slow. This is really fun. All right, so we just crank it up. So it automatically locks. To release, you need to basically start pulling, and then you can pull the lever forward. That'll allow you to come back down. You let go of the lever, and then it locks in place. Okay? It's on an airline cable, so it should be safe, but because it's spun around this wheel here, when I'm working, I try to keep my hands all on this side just in case. Because it's a tripod, this allows you to go right up against the outside wall. And so then once you've got it in position, take these metal bars down, because they will keep the drywall from closing up tight against the outside wall. Give it a little bit of a snug. And then just lift her into position. Now, you don't want to be too tight because you want to be able to get that corner right where you want it. And once you got your corner in a good position, then you can lift it up nice and snug everywhere, and it holds in position for you. So now you can get up on a ladder, grab the drywall, and you can't even move this thing around. So if you're out of position, just come back down, pull up your safety, pull up on your tension, release your bar, let it down a little bit. Drop it down a 1/4 inch or so. Gives you a little bit of maneuvering ability here. Okay? There we go. Then it's just as simple as putting your screws in. Now this is a way that you can do this kind of work on your own in lightning speed time. Generally, as a rule, I like to throw a screw on every piece of strapping, just to mark where the straps are. There's my spot there. Throw a couple of screws in the middle of the sheet. You can finish screwing the whole sheet without moving this thing out of your way. But you might find it a little bit difficult to maneuver. You might also find it difficult to get your line of sight right. Or the arm might be right where your strapping is and it's in the way. Bottom line, an 8-foot sheet of drywall. If you had 2 screws in the corners on each side and a couple in the middle, it would hold up by itself. You can release the arm long before you're done and pull the lift back down. No problem. Okay? Pull it away again. Put out the extension arms again and throw on your next sheet. So this room that we're doing here is, I think it's 8 sheets of drywall long. It'll take approximately 4 or 5 minutes per sheet to install. You've got a couple mechanical cutouts, so add a few minutes for that, but we can have this whole ceiling done in about an hour. 30 bucks, better than hiring 2 guys to give you a hand. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos by all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. Welcome to our tutorial on how to hang drywall. There's not a whole lot to talk about until we have it, so let's go get started. Put it right into the corner. Okay, you get to drive the ship. All right, and now I just close it like a door. Okay, that's the easiest way. Now we both lift together. And we make it your side tight to the right and up. Okay? And then you can see how the gap at the ceiling is closed real nice. There we go. So when you're installing a wall, you only need a couple screws. And then mark one about midpoint up. If you only put them in the bottom, you'll turn around to walk away. You'll open a door to leave room, create a vacuum with the air pressure, and you pull it right off the wall. Some poor sucker will be sitting here doing some work and take the back of the head. Never a good thing. Before you put the bottom one on, mark all your studs by putting a screw in them. All right? And you can get your assistant or your kids to fill in all the screws later. What's the height here to the ground? Now because this is a concrete floor underneath, we want to measure all 3 spots. Actual number is 44.5, 45, 45 there? Okay. So, when you're figuring out what to cut, you take your shortest number and you cut it all to fit this, okay? So instead of going 44.5, that'll be tight, we're gonna go cut the whole thing at 44. So I have a 1/2 inch gap there and a 1 inch gap there. It's not gonna matter. After the flooring is on, we have a 3 inch baseboard, lots of meat, They'll work out real well. Don't be afraid to leave a gap underneath your drywall of about 1 inch. If you're going directly to concrete, you definitely have to leave the inch. Never want drywall in contact with your concrete. It'll pull the moisture out of the concrete into the wallboard. Guaranteed to feed the mold that's naturally occurring in the wood, and your baseboards are going to go black. Okay. Have we marked the floor plug?
Yep.
Beautiful. To the ground. Where did you mark it? Oh, on the floor. Okay, that's cool. So I went to the store to pick up a panel lifter because I got a couple cheats that I usually use, but I thought, you know, if I'm teaching people how to do this on a video, I should probably teach them about this great little tool. There's a lot of different options out there within the panel lifting department. Basically, it's just a foot, it's a lever point, you step on it, you lift the drywall. And the idea is to save you time and money and energy. You really want to get this nice and tight, the gap. This is the one you're going to tape. And the gap at the ground doesn't matter. So we're going to push it to the wall, you're going to lift it up. All right, there you go, throw in a screw. Beautiful. Mission accomplished. Not a bad little tool. It's a beautiful thing. All right, now, like I've been preaching, always cut your holes as you go. 14 up from the ground. Well, that mark was close. Your mark was on the right side of the box, so I thought that meant middle.
Oh, been standing
When you install your studs in your wall, level and straight, it's so much easier to put in a screw. You can just hold roughly where you were, release the drill, and gravity falls. That's where the wood is. It's so easy. You'll never miss, and you'll never have all those annoying little holes to repair. All right, so that basically covers all of the basics on how to install drywall. There's a couple of other little things that we're gonna learn. One of them is, if you're having 2 sheets of drywall butt up against each other, you wanna have it join on a stud right in the middle. So in that scenario, let's look at it this way. If this is where the 2 sheets are gonna meet, this is where you want them to meet, right in the middle line. So if I'm gonna be cutting a sheet like that, I actually wanna measure from the corner to that pencil line. All right? Take that measurement and go out to your drywall and then measure off your drywall from here to the measurement and make the rough cut on the inside corner. Leave all the factory edges butting up against each other, because whenever you cut drywall, you always get little rigid bumps. If you screw that up, grab your rasp. This is like a file for drywall. Works awesome. You can clean it up, make sure all your joints are nice and tight. Other than installing your drywall, all you need to know is how to tape it. So watch our other videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel, make sure to check out this project video. This is gonna be a lot of fun. So looking forward to seeing you next time. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. So now you've finished closing up your basement, and it doesn't look anything like this because you haven't taped it yet. So your next step is to go for the phone and call someone to do your mud work for you. So here you go. I'm going to teach you all the tips and all the tricks that you need so you can finish it yourself, and you're going to do it like a pro. You're not going to do it like that little course you get at the building store for 2 hours. You're not going to do it like they show you in the videos I've seen on YouTube so far. This is a complete guide to how to buy the right tools, how to use them, and how to finish this basement like a pro with a finish that's even better than the house you're living in right now. So, first thing you need, basic tools. We're gonna keep it simple. You got a 4-inch flexible blade knife, all right? This is the workhorse. This does all of the little details and all of the setting of the tape. The other knife you're gonna need, and I'm gonna suggest this if you've never done this before, is a 4x10, about the same size as a heating register in your house. This should be really sharp. Now I like this one. This is a stainless steel blade. It won't rust. It's very strong. When you buy it, if you start using it right away, you're gonna get this little grainy look in the mud. So grab yourself a sanding sponge, sit down and watch your favorite TV show, spend about 30 minutes sanding the edges, and then it'll go silky smooth when you're applying your mud. That's your secret, okay? Next thing you need is a hock. I've seen a lot of guys talking about these little metal trays and they put a couple scoops of mud in there and they carry it around and wasting your time. You're gonna spend all your day putting mud in and taking mud out of that little bucket. This is a hock. This is the workhorse for any professional taper. While you're working, you can also catch any mud coming off the ceiling. Brilliant, keep your floors clean. Other than that, all you really need is some mixing equipment. For the basics, we have a slow speed drill. Now this is something that I would recommend if you're gonna mix the whole box at a time. It might be a tool that's not worth investing in if you're only doing your one basement. So you can use a variable speed drill. Just make sure that you're only mixing half a box at a time so you're not overworking your drill and making it burn out. Okay, we need some Sheetrock 45. And this is just a compound that comes in powder form. You're gonna add water and make your own mud. This is designed to set really quick. It has a hardener in it. So there's different applications that you wanna use a hardener, and we'll go through those in a few minutes. Other than that, you need some mixing paddles, pails, some water, and a sponge. If you don't have a sponge, don't start. Go buy a sponge. Without the sponge, you can't keep the pail that you're keeping your mud in clean. It'll dry out, get crunchy, fall in your mud, and as you're putting it on your wall, you're gonna be making big lines and grooves everywhere and destroy your work. So once you've got all the basics set up, I recommend getting a platform like this as well. These are really quick and simple. They're made of aluminum and you can move that around real easy. Helps you to work on the ceiling. Step ladder will also work, but again, you're limited. You can only work in a couple feet at a time. So having a platform like this helps make the job go a lot smoother. Okay, so you'll notice when you go to the store, there's a lot of different kinds of mud available. There's, well, this is CGC as a manufacturer, but there's beige, there's white, there's ultralight, there's for heavy fill, there's all kinds of different products. I prefer to use the machine mud. This is the one that's designed to go in we call it the bazooka, the big tube, and it's more of a commercial application. Don't go buy a bazooka, they're very expensive, but the mud is fantastic. So here's what we do. It's a couple extra bucks a box, but it comes in a really nice consistency. It goes on the wall really smooth. And so what I do is I just take the whole bag out. Save the box because you're gonna need it for the garbage afterwards. Turn it upside down. Empty it into the pail. Okay. Just like that, pull the plastic over. That's only 25 cents of mud left. I like to stay clean. If you really want to, you can fight with that and get all the mud possible out of there. I'll leave that up to you. Now, this mud is ready to be applied. Most people just take it right out of the box and go. And they'll put it on their hock, grab a little bit of mud. It's very stiff. You see all the air pockets? And they'll just work it up a little bit and you'll see it get a little bit smoother. Okay? That's not terrible mud, but in my business, air pockets are very dangerous because what happens is it gets settled in behind your paper tape, and then after you've done your first coat, you've got to go around and cut all the paper and clean it up and then fill it in, and that's just a great big waste of time. Okay, so what we do, 1 handful, 2 handfuls of mud. That's it. That's the whole secret. Get your mixing blade in there. Stick on your slow speed mixer. Now, hold on for dear life. Squeeze with your legs. Start near the top, really slow. Work that water through. All right, and then just kind of finish whipping it up. Okay. Put your blade back in the bucket of water, keep that clean. Now I'll show you the difference. It's already silky smooth. All right, it's a little bit thinner, real easy to work with, really obedient. The air pockets are gone. And I can use this mud for my first or my second coat, okay? And then it's gonna be perfect. Now for my final coat of mud, we wanna go even thinner because the last coat is really the one you're sanding. I'm not a big fan of sanding in between coats. I like to do clean mud work. So what I'll do is I'll take another 2 handfuls of water and I'll mix this one. Go. Now this coat is even thinner, okay? It'll stay on a hawk, but it is really soupy. That's a perfect finished coat. When that's dry, you can sand that with relative ease, and if you have a nice clean application, you hardly have to sand it at all. So, before you begin, the first step is actually to fill all your gaps. So anywhere where your drywall has been installed on a bit of an angle and opened up a hole, you want to fill your hole. And you want to use something with a hardener in it because when you're taping, if you fill it with regular mud and then apply your tape, the mud will shrink as it sets. It'll pull away from the tape and you'll get an air pocket. So what we do, take your knife. Now when you're mixing a dry powder, you always want to add a little bit of water first. Okay, in this particular powder, it's about a 1/3, 2/3 scenario. Again, we're going to use a smaller mixing blade here. You could even use a paint mixer or a grout mixer. Now, we'll take a look inside the pail. This is all about what you see. Okay, right now, it's very lumpy. Well, I just add a couple handfuls at a time until we get it the way we want it. That's the safest way to do it. There we go. Your mixer in your pail of water. Now this is nice and fluffy, okay? Nice and easy to work with. But because it has a hardener, within 30 minutes, this will be hard, it won't shrink anymore, and you'll be able to tape over top of this. All right, so we've shown you all the tools and all of the mixing techniques. We have our mud, we're ready to go for first coat. Let's go fill some caps. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. So we've gone through all of our tools, we've shown you how to mix your muds. Now, before this dries, let's go fill some gaps. Before we get started taping, we want to fill our gaps. Now, this is my 45-minute mud. It's not silky smooth, it's a little thick, and I don't need one of those little pans to hold on to it. Hawks are awesome. You can have more mud, and it's a lot easier to carry like this than it is like this. You'll get nasty cramps. So basically what we're doing is we're just gonna slap some mud up here by the ceiling gap, okay? This is just, the more you can put up here, the better. This is not about being pretty. This is about being quick. You don't have a lot of time here. So put our knife here. We're gonna hold it on a bit of an angle, about 22 degrees. Okay, we're gonna fill up that gap, relatively speaking. Real quick and simple. If it's not filled, come from the top, use the side of the knife to press it in, and then do the same thing there. All right, so really what we're doing is just trying to fill the gap with this mud so that we can tape. This mud should be stiff enough to hold itself in place. And this is just a little something so that when we're taping, we're not relying on our wet compound to hold all up in place. Look at that, eh? Unbelievable. So if you don't succeed the first time, try again. Just keep on going back, fill in the bottom, fill in the top, until you get it nice and full like that. That'll be good enough for us. So usually you don't have a gap on the ceiling because you put the ceiling in first. But if you remember earlier, we had spray foam on this wall, and the client wanted it covered because they were concerned about the fumes from fire damage. That'd be the perfect storm, but you know, we reluctantly agreed to cover the walls, and now I'm faced with doing this mess. But this is effective. It does dry quick. And if I don't do this, I'm in for one heck of a mess when I'm doing my tape joints. We're still filling in the gaps. I gotta move quickly. The trick with this stuff is work from the side of the knife. Don't put the mud in this way. Come off the side of the knife. It's an easier way to put mud on the wall and leave it there. Then clean it this way. Okay? Put that in nice and okay. There we go. And we don't want any mud in this corner that shouldn't be there. Make sure you take time to clean it. Now that's ready to tape. This gap is about 1/2 inch. It's pretty severe. If you're finding you have trouble with that sort of thing happening, take it out and grab some mesh tape. Now the fiberglass mesh tape is something that you should have on you when you're working. It's a great little piece of tape to have in your toolbox. It gives you a lot of flexibility to solve problems like this. So generally speaking, I like to use paper tape only. I will keep fiberglass tape on hand for just such an occasion as this. I like to pre-measure, rip it off with the edge of your knife. It's got an adhesive on one side. So what I want to do is put it up here and bridge the gap. All right. And I want to slowly just work that into the corner without cutting it. Nice and easy. Now fiberglass tape, the unique property, you can use that to fill the gap, and this will help hold the mud, okay? You cannot use regular mud with fiberglass mesh tape. It won't hold. For whatever reason, I'm not a chemist. Oh, I only know it's from experience. Fiberglass mesh tape does not stick well to mud. And it will peel off if you don't use mud with a hardener. Now that we have that up there, back to the same process. Off the side of the knife. Remember, speed is very important here because this is already starting to set up pretty quick. Take all the excess out. Again, clean the bottom a little bit. You don't want mud there you don't need. And with some pressure. So if you have some time, work the joint just a little bit. Get all the extra mud out, get rid of the wrinkles. And if anything you don't like it, just push it up in the ceiling so it's out of the way and it'll be covered by the next coat. There we go. Ready to tape. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, if there's a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. Take your tape, make sure it's square. If it's not, just give it a rip. Go right to the ceiling with it. This is the only joint at the ceiling that I recommend overlapping your tape. I always recommend doing your inside corners first. I don't like to see paper over top of paper on the wall. So before I do this wall joint, I want to do my inside corner. I want to bring my paper up to this point, because I don't want to make this joint any thicker than it needs to be. So right now I'm just gently pressing that into the mud. Okay, cleaning out a little bit of excess. Now, most people stop there. And here's the secret. When you're done, get it wet, and then take it off again. And I'll tell you why. That's so important to do. If the surface of this paper is dry, like it is right now, while it's setting up and curing, it's gonna lift right off that wall. If your paper isn't wet, it will form an air bubble. Again, I don't understand the science. All I know is from experience. If I don't have wet paper drying on my wall, it's gonna form air bubbles and it's gonna come off. So I'm gonna just keep on wiping it on and wiping it off. Make sure it's nice and clean. This way, when I come back tomorrow, I know I'm not gonna have any bubbles, and I don't have to go backwards before I go forwards again. Okay, so we're gonna tape our horizontal joint next after we've done our inside corners. Again, the system here is really simple. You don't want to have tape over tape. So before we can do our butt joints, we want to have the horizontal joint on. Again, we've had this filled and it's dried overnight. So, process. Remember we talked about the taper joint? So from about 2 inches up and 2 inches down, it's all recessed. All right, just take your knife, put on your mud. This is a heck of a lot faster than any technique you've ever seen in any of your videos before. Okay, wow. Come back. And you're not removing it from the area that we're putting the tape. You're just removing it from the excess over and above what we need. Remember, that's higher and that's higher than this is. So we're gonna fill the gap. Finish off the rest of the wall. No sense taping halfway to the end of this wall and then stopping. There we go. Now when you're doing this, remember we talked about the crease? You want to have the crease inside the wall. So, nice straight edge. Place that right where we're starting. And you want to know where it is, just put your knife there, it'll sit in the crack. You can mark it. There we go. So now what we have to do is we want to get rid of the excess mud that's underneath this tape, just to set it in the mud. So I'm going to use my hawk to hold it, my second pair of hands, just the last couple feet here, okay folks? All right, this is what I'm talking about. Now I have one depth of finish, okay? Now you can come back. Now watch this. Same thing, off the side of the knife, get that paper wet, clean it up. You know, it's okay if you fill the gap between the paper and the edge of that recess in the drywall. Oops, I'm losing my step here. So we're gonna press it out, clean the top, clean the bottom, take a little bit of mud off the side, and then we missed a spot. Very important, make sure everything gets wet. If you have a wrinkle, just grab the edge of the tape and stretch it out. Again, let's clean the mud. Make sure it's wet. Clean that off. So the butt joint is one of the major reasons why we want to water our mud down. The science is really simple. Because we have two surfaces that are the same thickness, we're going to add mud and then add tape. We're creating a bump. So what we want to do is the science is to stretch that bump of whatever 2 millimeters over a large area so that we are causing ourselves to focus on such a large piece of wall we can't identify the fact that it comes out and goes back in again because we don't see any shadows. This is not about leveling. This wall is never going to be level. It'll never be flat. It'll always have a bump. You want to just make the bump so gradual and so wide that it's not recognizable. One of the ways you do that is by staggering your joints. Don't ever put them on top of each other because now you're creating an opportunity. If the sun hits it just a certain way, you're going to see that bump, okay? So it's the same thing. You want to fill the gap, side of the knife, put it on nice and liberal. Now when you're doing a horizontal joint, you want to work from the bottom up. If you do it from the top down, and I'll show you this demonstration. Here we go. Oh, goopy. Mud's going to end up everywhere, okay? If you work from the bottom down, bottom up, you have a lot more control. The mud's getting pushed to the side while you're going up, and it will stick to the wall. Take our paper tape, check your edge, make sure it's nice and square. Find that spot where we want to start. Okay. Press the mud out from behind. Set your depth. Just gently press it in, not too firmly at this point. Okay. Now, we have to hold the hock and press up. Okay? That'll keep your fingers clean. And it'll also set it up so that you can clean the mud out from the bottom. A lot of times you'll see guys when they're taping, they have a huge mound of mud at the bottom because they don't take the time to be clean with their work. Take the time and do clean work. Makes installing your baseboards easier. Okay, so the other element of the wall we want to cover is the ceiling corners and then the screws. So the ceiling corners are simple, same thing. Load your mud on, come off the side of the tape. Side of your knife. Okay, now there's that hardener we talked about earlier. It's all set in place now. We only did that 30 minutes ago, but we're ready to tape the corner. Just making sure I have mud everywhere, because I don't want to have a dry spot. Good, same thing, inside corner, measure, tear, rip, install. Just place it up in there, nice and gentle. Get your third hand. Oh, press that in. Okay, really nice. And we'll get it right. Get the wrinkles out of it. When you're done, put your knife up against your corner, create pressure, tear it off. That's done. So how to fill a screw hole properly. I know it sounds silly, it's the smallest issue, but most of the time when you're checking the wall for imperfections, it's going to be a screw hole problem. All right, so people come along and they'll wipe the mud in two different directions, and that's great. So you fill the hole. Problem is, the mud shrinks when it dries. And most of these screws have been put in with a dimpler, and that thickness needs a second coat. So don't just do it once and think you're done. Make sure every time you do your coat on your wall, you hit your screws. Now, if you go this way and then this way, you'll get the job done, but you'll see what happens. It's a lot of work. You're gonna have little pieces left everywhere. If you have too much mud on your tool, you're like, oh, no, no. It's a lot of time to spend on a screw. Instead, put it on the same way you're applying it, off the side. Go up and down. Off the side and then straight down. This way, you're applying it on 2 inches going up and cleaning it with a 4-inch tool coming down. No extra mess. You can do all the screw holes in this entire basement in about 10 minutes. All right, so the last element that you want to make sure that you take care of on your first coat of mud is your paper bead outside corners that have the metal on the inside of them, okay? There's two kind of corner beads. There's this and there's metal. Actually, there's three. There are plastic. Those are for fancy things. If you're doing curves, you're gonna have to get that, but we're gonna cover this one for first coat because I like to fill it, get it in, and then leave all this paper exposed just like the rest of my paper joints. I find if I put this on during the second coat and then I try to fill it right away, I end up putting too much moisture there and it always bubbles. So always put this on at your first coat. It won't cause you any problems. This is really designed for bulkheads. The way we do our bulkheads is we have to watch the video. We set up a laser and now we have metal tracking here. So we don't have any wood in this corner to screw anything to. So I want to just take my rasp, make sure my outside corner is nice and clean and I don't have any protrusions. Did you see that? Keep your hawk underneath, catch all your drips. You never get mud on your shoes. Now you see all this mess down here. We should have taken the time to put a filler in here. But if you didn't, because this paper bead comes with corner that's full of metal, you can get away with using regular mud here. The idea is just get it all on. And we just want a nice big wet line here that's wider than our corner bead. All right, now in the corner bead, there's the metal corner. This is the short side, it's 3/8. This one is almost 5/8. The wide metal goes over the exposed drywall. Okay, folks? That's very important. So when you're measuring, always make sure you're holding it right so that your finished factory edge is going up another finished factory edge. And you just place it in. Use your knife now. You want to have a gap. So make sure you move it around and have a gap. Here's my ceiling. Check this out. No gap. So I can just pull down that corner. Make sure that I have a gap. So I'm going to clean that out. There. Pull it down a little bit. Gap. Gap. That's what we're doing. Making sure that everywhere we go, we have a gap to fill so that we don't have to bring the mud up and around to finish. All right. Now again, like I said, if you do it this way and you let that sit overnight, it'll be nice and dry. And then when you come back to do your corners, you can fill it with 45, your quick set mud with the hardener. And then about an hour later, you can come by and put your finish coat on and all your outside corners are done. Okay, so that's basically all you need to know about how to do a first coat. So we're just gonna finish all of our joints and we'll see you again back here tomorrow. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. Day 2, butt joint. We still got butt joints on the ceiling. Just take the edge of your knife and clean that junk off. All right. Now we're good to go. So it's the same process. You're just gonna fill down one side. Get a good pack of mud. If you collect your mud and put it on your hawk so you don't have much at the top and bottom, it shouldn't land all over your face when you're working upside down like this. Okay? Now we want to clean by putting that pressure. You see the ridge is too close. There we go. Clean with the pressure on the outside over here. And then one down the middle on the paper. And leave those lines there. That tells us where it is that we filled to and what we have to fill afterwards, okay? Same thing coming the other way. So in drywall, less is more. The goal is not to put on so much mud and then sand for 14 days to get it all nice and smooth. The goal is to apply the mud smooth and then just sand to change the texture of the surface. That's it. All right, so here we go. We've got that all set up. Less is more. If we put too much on there, then we got to take it all back off again. That's just a waste of time. Once you have all your butt joints done, if you still have any mud left, you can take care of all your inside corners. All right, just a real quick look. take your 4-inch knife, run your corner with it real quick. Make sure that you don't have any big chunks of mud that are in your way. Again, a little bit of mud. I like to go with the left side of the corner first because I'm right-handed. It just makes sense to me. And I'm just gonna go and put more mud than I need. Okay. This is one application where you don't want to use the side of your knife because you want to set up mud going from 0 to cover over that 4 inches. Keep your tools clean as you go, you won't wear it. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to use pressure on this knife like this. So I'm cleaning this mud as tight as I can and leaving the ridge. Now you see I'm going to change direction because when you're doing finish work, you always come towards your finish work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trough out the inside corner with my knife. Then when I put my pressure on, it'll fill it up and finish flat without any excess. You see that? I'm not making the other side of that corner dirty. As soon as I see a little excess mud, I'll take it out, hit the trough again, clean my knife. I'll start coming from the other direction this time. Always finishing to finish mud. Second day, first coat on your inside corners, only do one side. There's a tool on the market, and we should talk about this. It's got a handle and it's got this little V-notch on it, and it's designed, you put a bunch of mud in the corner and you track it down. And it's supposed to clean all the excess mud out of your way, but it leaves way too much mud in the corner, and the corner isn't sharp. You want a 90-degree corner. So use a tool with 90 degrees. Those are really rounded. And then when you come back in to sand that, you're always going to sand too much out of the corner. You end up with these deep, great big deep grooves in your drywall. It looks like hell. So we saw on day one, we like to install our paper corner beads and all of our bulkheads anywhere where there's no meat in the back there, right? So no wood. But on day two, I like to put all my metal corner beads on, and maybe the camera can pick this up. But you'll see that it's 90 degrees, maybe even open a little bit more than 90 degrees. What I prefer to do, take 2 seconds, pinch that together, more of an 85, okay? And the reason is when I screw this on, I want the outside corner of that bead to be sticking out in both directions. I don't want it flat. I know these are made for really quick installation. There's a tool on the market for the professional drywall installers. They put the corner bead on and they just slam this hammer device over top of it and it breaks the metal, grabs the drywall, and they're good to go. But if you're working in your home and you like a nice joint, then this is the way to put it on. We're gonna push it up to the ceiling. Now, Max, maybe with the camera you can see this. Now I've got a gap here, and I've got a gap here to fill. All right? So when you're doing outside corner beads, you're gonna have a pretty significant gap, and that's a good thing. And because we bent the metal and we created a nice gap, we can use drywall screws. Again, there is a blue ring drywall nail on the market, and it's a nice little nail, and you can hammer them in. It's a thin metal, it comes with a flat head, and you can pound them in, and it does a great job. But I would rather have to push that, get a good grab. Then I don't have to rely on adhesives or something mechanical that busts through the metal into the drywall. It's a little old-fashioned, but I get to sleep at night. And you don't have to put a screw in every single hole. Every 16 to 24 inches is plenty, as long as you have a nice tight corner, and you're good to go. Okay, so I'm gonna take my 45-minute mud here now. We're gonna fill this metal corner, and we're gonna go to all of our paper beads and fill those as well. Day 2 is outside corner day, and I'm just using the side of my trowel and loading it on, okay? And that's it, folks. Coming back and taking it off. I'm just setting my knife about 3 inches from the inside corner there. I don't want to take out any mud that's not necessary out of that inside corner. That's a fresh corner. All right. Not using pressure on this knife because I don't want to groove it out. Just want to clean it up. made a mess on my inside corner, so I'm going to go back and fix that right away. Okay, so this is going to be a door frame. Really important when you're working around door frames. You don't add a thickness to the wall next to where your door jamb goes, okay? So you don't want to just have this huge pile of mud sitting there like that, all right? That's going to cause you a whole world of hurt when it goes to do finishing trim. You want to clean as tight as you can from that drywall to the outside of that corner. So put your knife on there, use some pressure. We got our 45-minute mud on our hawk. I should probably be talking and moving a little faster as it dries. But you want to just take your knife, double check that everything is cleaned up before you get started. Fill it. And just, I'm kind of doing like a rolling. I'm starting like that and I'm rolling it off, okay? Just so that I leave the mud on the wall. That's just easier. And then you can come back with a bit of pressure. Okay? And I don't need this to be perfect. I just need it not to be bumpy. I don't want anything sticking out further than what I'm going to have as a finish, because we're going to come back in about a half an hour and put another coat on it. Now, when you're doing underneath, again, start from the outside. Roll it off at the corners. When you come to one of these outside corners, come at it from the angle so you're finishing on both metals at the same time, okay? That'll set the depth of the mud real nice. And then when you're ready to clean it off, you can come at it this way, ease off on the pressure, come at it this way, ease off on the pressure, and then come at it from the back side. All right? You're gonna see these ridges. They're not your enemy. You can clean them up a little bit, but leave the ridges there. Something like that. Okay, so we're still working on our second coat. So I like to work through my room clockwise because I'm right-handed. That way I'm always finishing towards my finished mud. So I did my outside corner, I've done my inside corner. Now we're gonna do horizontal joints. This is day 2, and this is a fill coat day. What we're looking at throwing a lot of mud on the wall to fill the coat from here to here, and then maybe just stretch it out just a hair. Make sure that it's all nice and level. So when you're doing that, you want to put pressure on the bottom on a bit of an angle here, so you're not pouring mud all over the floor, okay? Clean off all the excess, and then with a little bit of pressure, top and bottom nice and even, fill it all in. That's it. We don't want to see this on second coat. I don't want to see that. If you can't see the tape, you've used too much mud, all right? The mud is somewhat translucent. When you do it properly, you should be able to see your tape through the mud, okay? You want to see the definition of the tapered joint, and you want to know that you've just filled what's necessary, and that's it, and you've taken the rest of that mud off the wall. Second opportunity, hit the screw holes, okay? Never let an opportunity go by to hit the screw holes. Gives you an opportunity, A, to make sure that they're all sunk. You don't have the head sticking out. And, oh, we have a ridge. Need to investigate. Okay, so somewhere during construction here, that screw hole missed the mark, and it's getting filled. When that happens, don't just cover it up with mud and then sand it bump smooth. Dent it with your handle. Fill that hole with mud. All right, same with this. This is a bit of a mess, okay? Add mud, add paper, clean it out. Here's the crazy part. Now, this patch is back to first coat. And this is ultimately the problem. So the way we fix this is tomorrow when we come, when this is dry, we'll actually hit this with some 45-minute mud, and then we'll do a finish coat over top. That way the whole job's finished together. All right, so the only thing left to do on second coat is to hit your outside corners with your finished mud. And here's what you do. Stick your finger in it. If it makes a hole, it's not dry. Leave it alone until it's dry, and then we'll do this in a few minutes. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. here we are on day 3 of the mud work. So day 1, we did all of our tape joints. Day 2, we did our inside and outside corners, and we took care of our butt joints. Day 3, now it's time to take care of all the horizontals. So first of all, we have to get rid of all these ridges that are left over from day 2. Okay? This is all I do. You don't need to sand. Now we're ready to mud. So we're gonna take our mud on our 10-inch trowel, slap it on, put an angle on it, put pressure on the bottom, so we're constantly forcing the mud up. Don't do anything special around those plugins and switches, just keep on filling, all right? Now if you do it that way, it's not gonna end up all over the floor. Okay, right over your butt joint. And we're just cleaning this out, right? You know, at the top, we want to be able to see our paper. We don't want to use too much mud. Okay? Now we're going to come back the other way and finish towards what's finished. Top and bottom, pressure along the middle. We're not just throwing a bunch of mud on the wall. We're trying to fill from here to here and make it smooth. Pressure across the top, pressure across the bottom. Very, very important. If you have a huge job like a basement to do and you start day 3 of taping with your horizontals, you can come back near the end of the day and hit your butt joints again, but don't do it until this mud is dried up, okay? Give it a few hours to set up and get stiff, because the last thing you want to do is start coming down here and putting grooves in that finish coat. That would be a no-no, all right? On your 3rd day of working in your basement, you want to do the rest of your inside corners. Now you'll see here, this mud is actually still wet. You can see the dark line, all right? We don't want to be doing that one, but the ceiling looks perfect. So that's why you want to do your inside corners as soon as you can get to it, because sometimes they take an extra day to dry out. Especially in a basement, you're below grade, there's not as much place for the moisture to go because it's on a vapor barrier wall. So the only place that the moisture can go is back into the room, where a lot of these interior walls, the moisture can go from the drywall in both directions. So they tend to dry faster. So we'll get up here. It's a little bit of a cramped space, but I want to be able to see what I'm doing. Again, before we get started, we'll just put the knife across. Make sure we don't have any ridges or bumps or chunks of mud that are in our way. All right, working from the side of the knife, we want to just put the mud up towards the ceiling. Now the reason we want to wait until it's dry is because we're using the surface here as our edge. It's going to guide us. So now we're going to come back with our knife and we're going to go like this. And you're going to see a little bit of a ridge line here that happens. Come back the other way and we're going to clean out a groove again, just like we did the first time. And then, let me just start right in my corner, make this pretty. Always take time in your corners and make them pretty. Here we go. We're going to run this across. I'm starting to get a bit of a snowplow. I'll come by again, clean it up. Now I want to finish towards what's finished. Oh. Uh-oh. See that little bit of a ridge there is because the mud isn't quite dry enough. I'll be real gentle with this. Okay, so we did our 45-minute mud. Now it's hard. It doesn't have to be dry, just hard. And we're gonna finish it with our finish mud. And this is the one that we got a little bit wetter than their other coat. Okay, so we're just gonna put it on pretty liberal here. Here we go, right up to the top. Lay it in, give it a jiggle. All right, folks. So it's the end of day 3. Our horizontals are all drying up real nice, so now we're ready to hit the butt joints before we walk out the door. We're just gonna take our knife, scratch down the side, hit the bottom. Make sure all the junk is out of the way. Make sure your knife is nice and clean. Load it up, all right? Now, we've already filled from here. You can see the ridge. That's where we filled to, right? So what we want to do now is fill from there even further. All right? Put a nice healthy whack of mud in that line. Okay? That stretches the joint out. Then you go one more over the middle. Now, this one's a little bit different. because the last time we started from the outside with pressure working to the middle. This time we're going to start from the middle working outside. All right, so again, lots of pressure here. We don't want to make the joint any thicker than it already is. And now we're going to go with the outside pressure. We're basically working off that ridge. Okay, and then one more time, a little further up. And we just want to clean up down here because we don't want to have a bunch of mud where our baseboards are going. Again, outward pressure. Come at it from both directions. Get rid of all that extra mud. Now your butt joint is really filled and really stretched. If you see junk in the mud, get rid of it. You don't want to have it there making grooves. All right, so by the end of your third day of doing mud, you've got your taping, you've done your inside corners, you've done your butt joints, you've done your horizontals, you've done your outside corners, your paper, your metal, your filler, your finish coat. Hopefully, if things have dried well, you've done your inside corners on the other side, and you've hit your screw holes 2 times, maybe 3. You've had a chance to go around and find imperfections, fill them up with tape, repair anything that needs to be repaired, and all that's left now is the finish coat. Wow, that's a lot of work. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. We're at the final phase now, last day of taping. If you have issues that haven't been corrected fast enough and you need an extra day, don't try to do the last coat until you're absolutely ready. It will drive you nuts and you'll end up wasting time going backwards. So save your final coat until your wall's ready for it. And what I want to show you is a little bit of science of what we're doing here. Here's a straight wall. Nobody would look at that wall and say, ooh, there's a bulge in it, right? But when I put my level up against it, it's got some comings and goings, little shadows. 1/8 of an inch here, 1/8 of an inch there. It's because we're building with wood, folks. Now here is my butt joint, okay? 1/8 of an inch there, but it has a little bit more movement, all right? So just that little bit, the fact that it opens up to about 1/4 of an inch if I push it hard on one side or the other. This is why we have to make it nice and wide. When you look at a wall, you can only focus in about a 3 to 4 foot diameter. If your bump goes from 0 to the height of the bump back to 0 again, you will notice that ridge because you are able to focus on that ridge inside that area. If I stretch that same depth over a larger area, now you can't focus on the change because you have to look left and then right to see where it went from 0 to ridge and back again. So all we're doing is we're just stretching the light over a larger surface area for the same ridge depth so that it's invisible to the eye. It's still going to be there, it's still going to be a bump, you just won't be able to see it. So here's how we do it. We started off with putting mud down the middle, right, and getting our little ridges. We took off the ridges and we stretched it out. Now we're going to stretch it out one more time, okay? Over here. And over here. That's how wide we're going to make our joint, okay? Now, we have plugs and everything in the middle. There can be an irritation. But all we're going to do is just put mud everywhere because it's final coat. Now, we're going to start where our tape joint is, and using really good pressure, we're going to clean that mud off. Okay? And now I'm going to use a little bit outward pressure, but not much, pretty consistent, and we're going to just clean that off because that's been filled up and raised. Now we're going to start over here. We're going to clean that off. And then outside pressure, we're going to clean that off. So now we come over here, again, we're going to just clean it all off. The secret here is to make sure that you have nice clean mud, okay? No dirt in it. You won't get any scratches. Then you won't have to come back and fill up anything when you're done. Okay, so here we go. Just want to keep my hawk nice and clean. I don't want to have the mud on the outside of it because it'll start to dry even while it's sitting here. Now, I have got this string here hooked up. This is the TV wall, so we got a channel built up here where we can actually pull cables from the entertainment center to the TV that we mounted on the wall above. Now, the reason we're going to fill down here is so that the surface of the wall is the same all the way around these plugs. When you're done and you go to put your cover plates on, you don't want to have mud here, here, and here, because then they'll be all rocking all over the place and they will be obviously ugly. Take your knife, fill up these gaps, okay? You really want to have that mud depth very consistent all around your plugs. It's going to be a little bit messy, but that's what sanding is for. Start near the top, really slow. Work that water through. All right, and then just kind of finish whipping it up. Okay, back. Now I'm doing finishing coat here, and I noticed some dirt in my mud from when I was bent down by the floor, so I had to change my mud. I do not want to have junk in my mud when I'm doing my walls. So same thing. We're going to fill the wall up. I'm just putting mud on so that I can take it off. Okay. This is one of the benefits of using the Hawk. Now I clean the middle. Put in that pressure just a little bit towards the outside. The goal here is to make it nice and smooth. Now, I got some more mud now that I've taken it off. I can stretch this joint out a little bit. Here we go. So this is a really wide joint. Now if you're on a ladder, you're getting up and down the ladder, you're not going to be able to do it very fast, and you may not be able to do as nice a job. That's why having this bench is so handy. Highly recommend the bench. This is from Gorilla. I think it cost me like $80. Such a good investment. Good to go. And because it's final coat, we're going to take advantage of the fact that we're just going to have this thinner mud that we made for the final coat. We're going to apply it over our horizontal joint. Now this horizontal joint doesn't need any more mud. It's already filled. Everything is fine. Okay, what I am doing is I'm making sure that this whole wall surface is nice and smooth and uniform so that when I'm sanding, I'm getting an amazing result. So we'll come back into this corner. All right, now we're gonna go with some pretty significant pressure. We put it on and we're just taking it off. And we're going with a lot of pressure on the drywall side. You can see how large of an area is kind of foggy. Right? That's very, very thin mud. All right? Now when that's dry, you'll be able to sand that just by passing the block, and it's done. You don't have to fight with it. You don't need a huge dust cloud. You don't have to wear, like, I've seen people sanding drywall and they should be wearing a hazmat suit. This is a toxic material, and the last thing you want to do is create a lot of dust. So by all means, take your time and stretch it tight. Now we're going to finish towards the finish again, so we're going to start here in the middle, pushing hard. All right, here we go. I see a scratch there, so I'm going to come from above and flatten that scratch out. Done. Past all of my finished wall. So at the end of every day, make sure you wipe down your tools. You don't want to leave mud sitting on them. It'll just build up over time and it'll really, really affect the performance of your tools. All right, now, your mud is in your pail. Take that sponge we talked about earlier, wipe around the pail, and then put a good little dribble of water in here. Here we go. Here's your lid. Now, that's all you need to know about taping a basement or any other part of your house. If you like the information on here, subscribe to the channel. Coming up soon, we're going to be showing you how to do the finished flooring, the finished carpentry, hanging doors, how to sand this bad boy, and how easy it is when you do the mud right. Thanks for joining us. If you're enjoying these videos, please don't send us money, but send us your love. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. Not about what you see in the videos, but more than that, I want you to leave a comment about what's going on in your life. I personally take care to answer every one of the comments that come through the channel. So if you have a question about your own home project, by all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. So yesterday we finished all of our sanding and priming in the great room here. And I've seen this a lot, so I wanted to discuss this, but a lot of contractors I know, they'll finish their sanding and priming and they're in a real big race to start getting paint on the wall. They've got this illusion of, we have to start making it look like we're getting some progress. And so they race in to paint the ceilings, they get the first coat on the walls, but they don't take attention to the detail of the condition of the surface that they're painting. And the idea is, we're gonna get to that later. The approach is, we're gonna make it damage later, we're gonna have nicks and scratches that need to get fixed up. But what I wanted to talk about today is the importance of a good prime check. And this is part of a process that once you have all your walls primed and ready to go, you have to take a look at all the imperfections that are there before you paint, especially with the ceilings. This is key. You can see behind me, we have huge windows here, and behind that, that's the west. So that's where the sun's going down. So at different times of the day, you're gonna see different things going on with the shadowing and the lighting in this room. So it's very important that before you put paint on this ceiling, it's gotta be perfect. Remember, the quality is in the details. If I just go ahead and paint the ceiling today and then look for problems later on and touch it up, I'm gonna have problems because I'm gonna have different levels of acrylic and paint color and all the additives that are in the paint will be different concentrations and it's gonna scream at you. We've all seen the ceiling with the paint roller marks. That's somebody who painted after the fact and did their touch-ups in the wrong order. So what we're gonna do today is just show you how the process works and what you can expect to see when you're doing a prime check. So what I use is just a simple little trouble light. It's on a 20-foot cord. Now, pay attention and take note here because what I'm about 6 feet away from that corner. And traditionally, your warranty that you're gonna get from your builder, or your new home construction company, or a renovator is gonna be about 6, maybe 8 feet. If you can see it from 6 feet away, it's a problem, and that's what they'll address. But what I'm saying is, when I'm working, I don't wanna just say, well, it's good enough to pass warranty inspection. I wanna make sure that the product that I'm delivering is of the highest quality possible. So when I come and take a look at this corner with the camera, we don't really see anything. There's nothing really wrong. But if I was to bring the light up here and shine it this way, you don't see anything. But if I brought the light across the ceiling, you got that huge gouge in that corner. You got these huge gaps that are left after the sanding. And that's not really a problem. It doesn't mean that there was a lack of quality going on with the workmanship. It just means that you need to take a few minutes, identify these issues, and go over and get them filled. Because if you paint before you do this, like I said, you're gonna have marks. Now in a corner away from the window, you might never see it. But I'm gonna take the time, probably take about an hour to go through this room, and I'm gonna shine my light across the surface of the ceiling and look for every possible imperfection that I can find. And once I've done that, I can be confident knowing that this is gonna be the finest job that I can possibly produce. There we go. And that will help me to manage my clients' expectations and not disappoint them. Like, listen, there's nothing worse than finishing a job, having a client walk through and go, oh, I love it. Maybe it's February, the sun goes down early in the day, something in the evening, they come through, they inspect, they're happy. Give it a couple more months when the sun is really shining. Get it down here around 6:30, 7 o'clock. They're sitting down enjoying TV. they look up and they see all these imperfections, the phone rings. My basement looks like junk this time of day, come back and fix it. That's a huge problem at that point. Your flooring's in, the furniture's in, they're living in the space, they're disappointed. You can avoid all of that by taking an hour, going through and doing a prime check to make sure that before you finish, it's ready to be done. We were just talking earlier about doing a really good prime check. And so I'm gonna show you now a lot of the types of imperfections that you're gonna find, what you're looking for, so when you're passing your light over your wall, you have an idea of what to expect. So first of all, the screw holes. You'll notice that when you're doing your taping job, the screw holes, in a lot of cases, you see that? There's an indent. This one probably only got 2 coats instead of 3. And so, really simple. We take our mud and we just fill it up and pull it tight. At this point, it makes it look like a really big hole, but it's not that much of an indent. And so we're gonna pull it tight. So even if you forget to sand it, you can paint over top of that without any problem. The other thing you're gonna find are scratches and nicks. Like when we're sanding, we're going over the surface to change the texture of the drywall. We're not trying to sand it down until it's perfectly smooth, because that'll just expose the tape and remove all of the hard work you did getting there. So you can take the back of the knife to get rid of bumps. You can see here, we've got some imperfections. Just take care of those real quick. These scratches, they fill up nice and simple. And now it's a nice smooth wall. The other thing you're gonna see is just damage to the drywall. Okay? If the hole is really deep, don't pull it tight. Put a dollop on it so you have something to sand back. And when you're sanding, then you can sand back to a flush surface. The other thing down here, you can see we have some screw holes that have got a raised surface on the drywall. That's incredible. So what you do is you take the metal on the back of your knife, create a dent. And that gives you something you can fill in. Go at it from 2 different directions. And then just like the other part, leave a little bit extra on the wall. Something you can sand off. By the time you're done doing all of that, you're gonna find that there's nothing really left wrong with your wall. The other thing you want to take a look at is your corners. Most of the problems you're going to have with the drywall is not on the main surface. Screw holes, a couple pieces of damage, but most of the issues are going to be in the corners, in the edges. So we're going to just take a good look down. Oh, there we go, right there. I don't know, can you see that okay, Max? All right, so we're going to just follow along that edge there. There's 2 things you can do here. One is fix all those little scratches. And second is sometimes when you're sanding, you do too much of a groove into the drywall. And so you can fill up that corner, get it nice and sharp and 90 degrees again. A little dent there, scratch there, right? And then when you're done, come back in the other direction. Always bring your tape towards your finished mud so it finishes nice and smooth. A lot of times in the corners, because you're going different directions when you're doing your mud work, they'll need a little bit of love, so you just throw in a little mud, pull it nice and tight. And that just gets rid of all those little nicks and scratches that are there from the taping process. Now sometimes when you're mudding, you get a rough inside. 2 things can cause that. One is when you sanded, there was too much dust left there when the priming went on. Or second, when the knife was going along doing the inside corner, which you saw in a previous video, if the mud wasn't perfectly dry, it tears away a little bit. So the way you fix that, throw in a little bit of mud, and just hold it tight to the wall. Clean it. And there we go. And when we're done, we'll pull out our hand sand block. We're using mud that's a little bit browner than the paint, so it's easy to identify them after they're dry. Just go by, give them a quick scuff. You don't have to sand all the mud out, but you just want to make sure there's no ridges. Then you have to go back and prime it once again. Use the brush, prime the mud, so now the whole surface is at the same stage of preparedness, then you're ready to paint. So the trickiest part to hiding imperfections or doing the prime check is actually bulkheads. Basements are brutal for this because in a lot of cases, we don't have a full 8 feet to begin with. We've got ductwork we have to cover. I'm just shy of 6 feet tall, so I'm only a foot away from this bulkhead. So when I'm walking around, I'm looking at everything, and it doesn't take anything for me to see an imperfection because I'm so close. But the reality is this, as a contractor, we're trying to take our level of care past what's expected of us so that when we're finished the product, we don't disappoint the client. And as a client, you need to understand that warranty rules are still in effect. If you can see an imperfection in the ceiling when you're standing a foot away, that doesn't mean that it needs to be repaired. It just means that this is drywall. It's not a perfect world. In a lot of cases, people would stipple the ceilings, or they would shoot the mud on it and they would flatten it out and just do a knockdown texture. Those approaches hide all these imperfections, but when you want a flat surface, you're asking for something that's really difficult to deliver. And so we're gonna do the best we can. We're gonna try to go overboard. And then we're also gonna try to use our technology and our brain. So when we're doing lighting, we're using pot lighting here. And that downward light keeps you from visibly being able to see the ceiling the same as an upward light does. So we're not gonna use floor lamps underneath the bulkhead. And we're also gonna use a kind of paint that doesn't have any acrylic. It's just what I call dead flat. And what that does is I use a product from Glidden called Ultra Hide, and it helps to really quiet down all of the texture and adds a little bit of a grayness to it, so there aren't as many shadows in the ceiling. So what I can see now after I'm done painting, I won't see later. So if I can take a great deal of care now in preparing my surface, and I use good lighting, and I use good techniques and good paint products, then at the end of the day, we should have a result that is so spectacular. If as a client, you see one or two little imperfections in the entire job, it's not gonna warrant coming back in and redoing the whole surface. And you should just be able to be happy with that, I would think. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. Well, welcome back to our How to Drywall series. We're getting near the end. We're at the how to do the sanding stage. And a lot of people think, why talk about how to sand? You just sand and it makes a lot of mess. Nobody wants to do it. But there are a few tips and tricks that I'm gonna show you today that'll make your life a lot easier. One thing you need to know in a basement, whether it's in the wintertime or summertime, your HVAC system is operating. So we need to control the dust. Whether it has a fresh air intake on the furnace or it's high efficiency and it uses a cold air return on the wall, either way, spreading this dust through the home is disastrous. It's such a fine powder that even if only 10% of what you sand goes airborne, it's gonna be all through the house and the entire house needs to be clean. So the way that we accomplish this to create negative air and make this room kind of like a vacuum is we have a fan with an exhaust ducting running out the window. And what's happening is because it's sealed off, the fresh air from out here is being pulled through this hole, picking up the dust and getting sucked out through the fan. This guarantees that all the dust that's generated in this room is leaving the whole structure. We're not just maintaining it or containing it in a room. This is what we call negative air. You can see how the flap from this plastic is pulled inside. We have to have fresh air intake. It also assists in the camera work. Max is gonna come in and show you the system now. But before we do that, I guess we gotta get rid of this door. We'll put that on again later. All right, so this fan is a 3-speed fan. And it's not really rocket science. What we do is we shut up the door with plastic and create this little area where we're pushing air out of the room faster than it's coming in. Now it's simple to set up. We don't have anything elaborate going on here. We just have this ductwork kind of taped to the glass outside the window. There's fresh air coming in the room, but we're pushing out more square feet than this window can bring back in. So the way we test to see if we have negative air pressure is really simple. We simply cut a happy face smile in the plastic door, and if it's not flapping in and sucking into the room, we just turn the fan up to the next speed. Mission accomplished. So that's all we have to do. In this case, keep a small hole, keep the fan speed down. This allows us to work in fresh air and have all of the dust out of the building. Nice and simple. So first step, before you start sanding, you want to contain the dust in your environment. I think one of the reasons there's no sanding videos on the internet is because people don't want to get their camera equipment disgustingly dirty. So we're going to show you real quick what we've got is a plastic wall containing the room. And we have our exhaust fan and our ductwork going out the window. Now these types of fans are available for rent at their building store. The ducting is a little harder to find. You got to go basically to like a fire restoration supplier. But I use this on a regular basis on my job site. So if you're a contractor, I highly recommend this. Your fans are going to need some maintenance on a regular basis to clean the fins off. But the ductwork, you buy one box, it'll last you about a year. And what you do is you create negative pressure in this room. So I'm forcing air out the window, and I'm going to draw all the air that's clean from the house into my workspace And that negative pressure is like a vacuum. It collects the dust and shoots it out of the room. So I don't even need a mask, okay? So I thought I'd go through a couple of details before we turn the fan on. It's a little loud. So when it comes to sanding, you really only need two primary tools. One is a sanding block. I like to use the angled brush because I like to use the angled sponge because this corner here is fabulous for going into the corners. If it's all square, you'll find yourself putting grooves in the opposite side of the mud. So you could do this. If this is a small space you're doing, you could probably use one of these sponges. It'll do a bathroom all by itself. No need for anything else. Small space, you know, $6 or $7, in and done. But if you're doing a large space, like a basement or a bedroom, you're gonna need something bigger. And we've all seen the sanding poles. Those rectangular heads are difficult and they tend to flip over all the time, and it takes a little bit of getting used to be really good at it. And the last thing you want when you're sanding is to have the head flip over, put a huge chunk in your wall, and then you're right back to mudding again. So I recommend the Radius 360 system. These are awesome. They have detachable heads, so you can change it out and put a smaller triangle pad on here. But these things are wonderful. It's just a Velcro system, has a pad. When you're getting a little bit worn, you can throw them away, stick a new one on there, good to go. 150 grit on that paper. I think you can get them on 120 as well. I like the 150 for sanding my mud. You can use this at 120 for sanding between coats on your paint. That's just a free tip for you. So before we get started, again, if you don't have a negative air system, use a mask, okay? This stuff can be pretty dangerous, especially if you're exposed to it over a lot of time. But for me, I don't care. I'm going negative air. I'm gonna demonstrate what you have to do. So let's get the fan on. You notice in our taping video, when we're doing our mud joint, we're not trying to put it on real thick and then sand a whole lot off. We're trying to feather it out. We add water to our mud to thin it down, so we don't have a whole lot of sanding to do. So really all we gotta do is get our pad on there, and we're not trying to remove all of the mud, we're just trying to remove the ridge. You see just a little bit of dust? Just a couple of passes, and you'll see that it's feathered in. Kind of like one of those summer days, there's just a little bit of cloud in the air. There's no distinctive ridge here. And that's really the look we're going for. Once the ridge is done, we'll do the other ridge. You can see how easy this is to run around. It won't flip over on you. Now I'm happy with that. So all that's left is the area in the middle. We're not trying to remove the mud because we've already put it on really thin and really hard. What we're trying to do is change the texture of the mud so that it's the same as the wallboard, okay? This is the key. If you don't change the texture, when you paint, you'll see the difference in texture and it'll be obvious. So what we're gonna do, just a little bit of a light sand over the board. That's it. Now when you're done, you can't visually inspect your mud. Use your hand. If this all feels the same, you're good. If you feel any rough spots, oh, that's where you're gonna know. Give it a little bit more of attention. So, that's the basic gist of how to use the Radius 360. Some things you have to use the sponge for, so especially corners. So before you do your corners, you're gonna find that when you're taping, you're gonna have little chunks here and there. Just go around, clean out your corners, make sure that all the ridges and little bits of mud are knocked off your wall. Use your 4-inch knife for that. You don't want to have your sponge going into big chunks of mud because it will tick the corners out and it'll make it expire prematurely. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to feather out the edge, okay? Putting pressure on the inside so we're not gouging here. And then I'm going to clean the corner by opening the sponge 5 degrees, okay? I don't want to go like this because that big 10-inch piece of sponge, if I run it down in the corner, it's going to groove it all out and it'll look horrible. So you just want a little bit of contact in the corner. Again, just changing the texture. Don't sand all of the dents out. Go back with your Prime Check and fill the dents in. That's the key to sanding. Less is more. Get rid of the ridges and then walk away. Resist the temptation to sand and sand and sand until everything is smooth, because it won't be smooth. It'll just look smooth. You'll spend all day in this room instead of 30 or 40 minutes that this room would take. Do the other corner. Again, 5 degrees, just a little bit. Feather in the edge. And then just hit all of your screw holes. Make sure that you don't leave any ridges, because when you paint, that it will be noticeable. And there we go. Now, double check, make sure your edges are good. That is all you need to know when it comes to sanding. Now in here we have some imperfections, but again, the ridges are gone. When I come back after priming, we'll fill that in with the mud in our prime check. Then this wall will be perfect. The only other thing you need to know is when you're going around light switches and boxes and plugs, try to be careful. You don't go like this over and over and over and over again to get rid of that ridge, and then this way, because what you're going to do is create scratch lines that'll never go away. Okay, go on an angle, 45 degrees off the corner, and you will not have the scratch lines. Then you can just give it a bit of a touch up in the middle if you need it. Perfect every time. That's all you need to know. The only other thing we need to know actually is when you're done sanding is how to clean up. If you're in a small room, you can lay down a sheet of plastic. Most of the dust will land on the plastic. You gently pull the corners together, throw it in a garbage bag. When you're done, I like to use sweeping compound. This stuff is brilliant. It's been designed and used in industry for a lot of years. You can just eat the dust up. Okay? Look at that. That's how I clean up my sanding dust. You can grab your dustpan, throw that in a bag, and your mess is all taken care of. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, or a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch. So now you can see we got our room sanded. We've got our dust-free system has been removed. We don't need that here anymore. It's all been cleaned up. So now we're gonna just prime this. And the idea of priming drywall is you need to use the right paint. It has to be a primer sealer. You can't just use anything. And you apply the primer sealer with a little bit of pressure. When we were painting ceilings, we want to go nice and gentle, but when we're painting primer, we want to push the paint right through the paper to get it the good bond. That helps it to seal up, so that when we're doing our finish coats, it's not sucking all of that paint into the drywall. And so basically what you're doing is we want to paint about 1.5 inches away from the surface of the wall. We want to start with the ceiling, give it a nice liberal coat, push it in. This is not about having a thick coat. The primer's got a lot of solids in it, so a good primer is not wet. Okay, so if you bought a primer that's wet and is dripping all over you, take it back. You want to get something that's nice and thick, got a lot of solids in it. And at this point in the production, you don't need to worry too much about your ridges. That drywall is going to suck up any paint that hits it, and you cannot get a paint ridge. If you do, it doesn't matter, because you're going to be sanding again anyway, in between your coats. So this is not the time to worry about that. This is the time to use some pressure. All right? When you're all done with the rolling, and you don't need to get an even coat here, as it dries, it'll be uneven, so don't worry about that. Once your sealing is done, you can turn around and hit your wall. Same thing, leave room from the edges, because when we're all done with the rolling, we're gonna take our paintbrush out, and we're gonna come around, and we're gonna cut all of the joints. And that's all you need to know about priming. Get it wet, cover 100%. Don't cheat and leave the edges. I see a lot of guys do this. They'll prime the drywall and they won't paint and brush right in the corners. If you do that when you're doing your finished coats, you're gonna have a little shadow there. So don't cheat. Get it all covered, get it all sealed, and then you're gonna have a lot of success with your finished coat. So we're finally at that point in the project where things are gonna start happening really quickly. It's time to paint. We've done our sanding, our priming, our prime check. Now all we have to do is start working our way down from the top to the bottom of the room. So we're gonna start off with our ceilings. Very important. So many people do this wrong, and there's a lot to know to do a ceiling right. So I'm gonna go through all the steps with you. First of all, of course, is you have to go double check your prime check. Take your sanding block. Find those spots where you touched up earlier. Give them a quick little buff. Eliminate any of that extra mud. Change the texture of anything that you really had to lay in, like your corners. Again, open your sponge 5 degrees. Just make sure, here worrying about a wall, I'm gonna teach you how to paint a ceiling. But here we are. Get all of these areas here back up to perfect as best you can. Now we're good to go. Wow. Okay, so our spots are all taken care of. Now it's time to sand the ceiling. So once you've taken care of all your inside corners, very important, a lot of people miss this stage, but you need to sand between every layer of paint. A lot of times in the paint, there'll be dirt in the air that clings to the paint or little dry chunks from the pail from the process. You always want to sand first, get a nice smooth finish. So what we do, again, let's take our little Radius 360 sander here. Just a quick pass. You're not trying to change anything in the ceiling or sand out any spots, but you are making sure that your ceiling is nice and clean. So once your area is clean, now it's time to talk about your tools. What I use is a roller cage on ball bearing. This is really nice, does a great job. I like to use microfiber. Call me crazy, but I'll spend $6 or $7 on a good roller any day of the week if it's gonna get me the result that I want. This is a 13 mil. Depending on the area that you're painting, you might go with a little larger, but I found that with ceilings, you don't wanna have too much of a nap because you end up leaving roller marks. So very key. Now your paint, this is from Dulux. It's a Glidden product called Ultra Hide. It's brilliant paint. There's zero acrylic in this. Awesome for ceilings. Doesn't leave any shine. Doesn't draw attention to any imperfections that we may have missed during our prime check. So what I do is when I buy this, I have it shaken at the store. It's been sitting here a couple of days now. We got to make sure that it's shook up. Just roll it on its side. Give it a good bit of a beating. Make sure that it's mixed thoroughly through. After about 10 or 15 minutes of this, you've done about 10 minutes too much. Holy cow. Now, this lid can come off. If you can cut the ends, peel the strip, and pull the whole pail open, I recommend not doing that because the more air that gets in here, the more dried chunks of paint you're gonna have. If you're gonna use all 5 gallons in the same day, then by all means. What I usually like to do is just pull the top off, pour it into my tray with my liner. There we go. That's about 3/4 of a gallon. When you're done pouring it out, clean off the lid. Put the stopper back in. Okay, that'll help preserve your paint. Now, you're gonna wanna do 2 coats. But before you do your coats, you wanna do your cut-in. The way you cut is you fill the brush with paint by pushing it into the paint, filling the inside. You clean this off so there's no paint sitting on the outside of the brush. It's all inside the brush. Always paint from the inside. Okay, so we're doing ceilings, so we're gonna push it into the corner. I'm not gonna worry about getting a little bit of paint on the wall. As long as we don't have a ridge or too much excess there, we're fine. And what I'm doing is just trying to make sure that when I roll, I don't have to get the roller right up against the wall. We don't want to risk marking up our wall surface with the roller. And there we go. You can see that even though that paintbrush doesn't have any paint on the outside, it really covers a large area. Brilliant. Next, we're going to take our stick. Now these are designed to go together. This is a Sheetrock system. It's got a little lock-on pin on it so that your cage doesn't untwist on your handle. So it gives you a lot of control. The old kind you twist in like a broomstick. You're rolling up and down a wall or something, they'll start to untwist on you. You lose a lot of control. This gives you great control. You want to extend the stick as far as you can go, and you want to load this roller up. It usually takes about 15 or 20 passes. Really get it going. Okay, now, this is where you have to stop and think. My windows are over here, light's coming across this way. So my second coat, I want to be rolling in the same direction as the sun. In case I leave any ridges in my paint, you don't want it to create a shadow. Okay, and when you paint with 2 coats of ceiling paint, you go the first coat opposite of the finish coat. So if my finish coat is going to go this way, my first coat has to come this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to just put it on. We're not going to worry about trying to stretch it out too much. as much as we want to be concerned with not pushing too tightly up against the ceiling. You want to roll gently, okay? You don't want to see the nap of that roller start to get all compressed, because that's when the edges start to flare out and you get these big lines. Now, you'll notice that while I'm painting, I'm trying my best to keep my hands beneath my heart. This is a long day at the office. If I'm holding my stick up here, I got to make my body work a lot harder to pump all that blood up to my arms. What's the old rule? If you have a sore leg or something, you elevate it. You want to get the blood out of it. Well, if my arms are above my heart, I'm not going to have any blood in my arms. I'm going to tire out way too quick. So that's just a little trick so you can make your day a little bit easier. Try to keep your hands as low as possible on your stick. There we go, nice and gentle. Again, we're not looking for a lot of square footage here. We're just looking for an easy coverage. There we are, very nice. Now you notice this is not a pure white. The client has asked for a Benjamin Moore color, and I'm more than happy to oblige. There we go. So there's our first coat on the ceiling. Now all we do is do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again till the whole ceiling is finished. Wait about 20 minutes or so, and then by the time I finish painting this room, I can come back and do the second coat right away. So when you're painting your ceilings in a basement, you're going to have bulkheads. You have two options. You can paint the bulkhead the same color as the ceiling and same texture, or you can make an accent stripe. That's becoming a little bit passé. Most people want to have anything from the ceiling and the bulkhead up, all painted the ceiling. But the rules are the same. You can't cheat. You can't just bring the roller here and slap a lot of paint around. You got to cut and roll. So the way you cut is you fill the brush with paint on the inside, set your corner, and you just run it across like this, okay? This is how you would cut if you were using a color up against a finished ceiling too. Here we don't have to worry about it because we're also going to be cutting in the ceiling. Right? There we go. And the idea of this is we want to put enough paint on this surface that we get the color, but we don't have streaks. If you use too much paint with your brush, you'll have streaks, and that'll be there forever and it won't blend with your finished roll. Okay. All right. When it's time to paint your bulkheads, if your roller is full of paint like this, you're going to have 10 times the amount of paint that you need, okay? So what I would suggest is you roll out a piece of the ceiling, dry off your roller a little bit, then you come back, all right? Cage down so you don't hit your ceiling, and then gently, not too much strength here, gently roll that out, and then when you're done, come back down and just hit your edge to make sure you don't have any drips. After you're done that, all you need to do is let it dry. Usually a couple hours is plenty. Give it a quick light sand again. Same process, different direction. Now you can paint like a pro. Well, here we are. We finally finished our series on all the things related to drywall. So glad you could join us. And for all of you who've endured all of these tapes and you're sitting here right now still watching, we just wanted to once again encourage you, please subscribe to the channel. We've got some awesome things in the mix coming up soon. We're gonna be doing some more flooring, some laminate, some custom bar work. We've also got more plumbing videos and more general how-to. And I'm really looking forward to a new deck project. We're gonna do a screened-in porch this spring. So you might not see that until the fall, but that's all right. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Like, and feel free to leave comments. I'd love to get your questions about your how-to projects at your place. I answer these things personally, and believe me, it takes some time, but I'm happy to do it. I want to hear what you have to say, so looking forward to seeing you again next time. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but most importantly, comment on the videos. By all means, there's a suggestion of video you'd like to see, let us know. We'd love to be in touch.